What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors walks into what should be a simple morning interview, only to face a host who seems determined to humiliate him on live television? In just 35 seconds, a routine promotional appearance turned into the most shocking on-air meltdown in Good Morning America history. And it only took one question from George Stephanopoulos to set off a chain reaction that would end with Tom Hardy storming off the set while millions watched in disbelief. The morning started like any other at the Good Morning America studio in Times Square. Tom Hardy had flown in from London specifically for this interview to promote his latest film. He arrived on time, gracious with the crew, and ready to discuss his new project. What he didn't expect was that George Stephanopoulos had apparently decided this wasn't going to be a typical celebrity chat. The set was arranged with the standard configuration. George sat in the center chair, flanked by Robin Roberts on his right and Michael Strahan on his left. Tom settled into the guest chair across from them, relaxed and smiling. The cameras started rolling. The red light went on. Welcome back to Good Morning America. We're here with Tom Hardy, star of the new action thriller that everyone's talking about. George began, his tone already carrying an edge that made Robin glance sideways at him. Thanks for having me, Tom replied warmly. Happy to be here. George didn't waste time with pleasantries. So Tom, let's get right into it. Your new movie has been getting some mixed reviews. Critics are saying it's just another generic action film with no substance. How do you respond to people who say you're basically just cashing paychecks at this point? The smile on Tom's face faltered slightly. Robin's eyes widened. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Well, I wouldn't say that's entirely fair, Tom said, keeping his composure. We worked really hard on this film for over a year. The script went through multiple rewrites, we had an incredible stunt team, and I think the story has a lot more depth than people might expect from the trailers. George leaned forward, not backing down. But you've done what, 3 action movies in the last 2 years? Some people are wondering if Tom Hardy, the serious actor, has been replaced by Tom Hardy, the action star, who just wants the big payday. Robin jumped in quickly, trying to redirect. I actually read that you did a lot of your own stunts in this one, Tom. That must have been challenging. Yeah, I did about 70% of them myself, Tom answered, seeming grateful for the reprieve. There's one sequence where, let me ask you something else, George interrupted, talking right over him. Your co-star gave an interview last week where she mentioned that you were difficult to work with on set. She said you were moody and kept to yourself. Is that true? Tom's jaw tightened. I don't know what interview you're referring to, but I had a great working relationship with everyone on that film. She specifically said you wouldn't talk to anyone between takes and that you made people uncomfortable, George pressed. That sounds like difficult behavior to me. Michael tried to intervene. Hey George, maybe we should talk about the actual movie. Tom, what can you tell us about your character's journey? But George wasn't interested in letting Michael take over. No, I think this is important. We're talking about professionalism here. If you're being paid $20 million to make a movie, shouldn't you at least be pleasant to your colleagues? I was professional, Tom said, his voice getting firmer. I focused on my performance. If someone interpreted my process as being moody, that's their perspective, but I never disrespected anyone. George smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Your process. That's an interesting way to put it. Speaking of your process, there have been multiple reports over the years about you walking off sets, showing up late, and refusing to do press. You've developed quite a reputation. George, come on, Robin said, her voice strained. This feels a little what, Robin? George turned to her sharply. We're journalists. We ask tough questions. That's our job. He turned back to Tom. So are those reports accurate? Are you difficult? Tom took a deep breath. I think you're painting a picture that's not accurate. Have I walked off a set? Yes, once, because the director was screaming at a young actress and making her cry. I thought that was inappropriate. Have I been late? Sure, sometimes traffic happens. Have I refused to do press? Only when I was asked inappropriate personal questions about my family, which I keep private. So you admit you're selective about what questions you'll answer, George said, pouncing on it. That's interesting because we have some questions here from our viewers, and I wonder if you'll refuse to answer these too. Michael looked at the producers off camera, silently asking if they were going to stop this. Robin put her hand on George's arm. George, why don't we take a break and come back to George shook her off. We're live, Robin. We don't take breaks. He looked back at Tom. One viewer asks, Why do you always look so angry in photos? Another asks if you think you're too good to smile at fans. And here's one. Do you think your accent makes you seem more talented than you actually are? Tom sat back in his chair, staring at George in disbelief. Are you serious right now? They're legitimate questions from our audience, George said with a shrug. No, they're insults phrased as questions, Tom replied. And honestly, I'm not sure what I did to deserve this treatment. I came here to talk about a film that hundreds of people worked on for years, and you're sitting here trying to paint me as some kind of villain. I'm simply asking questions that people want answered, George said. If you can't handle a few tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. That's when Michael had enough. Okay, you know what, George? I think you're out of line here, man. Tom came here as our guest, and you're attacking him. I'm doing my job, Michael, George shot back. Maybe if you spent more time preparing for interviews instead of coasting on your football career, you'd understand that. Michael's mouth dropped open. Robin looked horrified. Tom stood up. I think I'm done here. Oh, so you're going to walk off? George said, his voice dripping with satisfaction, just like the report said. Can't handle the heat? The heat? Tom laughed, but there was no humor in it. This isn't heat. This isn't journalism. This is you trying to humiliate someone on live television for what? Ratings? To make yourself feel important? I don't need to humiliate anyone to feel important, George replied coldly. I've interviewed presidents, world leaders. I think I know what I'm doing. Then why are you acting like a tabloid reporter instead of a journalist? Tom fired back. Every question you've asked has been designed to get a reaction, not to get information. You've taken rumors and gossip and presented them as facts. You've ignored your co-hosts when they tried to steer this back to something respectful. And now you're sitting there with this smug look on your face like you've accomplished something. Robin stood up. Tom, I'm so sorry. This is not how we normally— Robin, you have nothing to apologize for, Tom said, his tone softening when he addressed her. You and Michael both tried to do the right thing. But him? He pointed at George. He knew exactly what he was doing from the first question. George remained seated, unmoved. So what's your point? My point is that this says more about you than it does about me, Tom said. You're sitting in that chair thinking you're untouchable because you've had a long career. But what you just did, ambushing a guest with hostile questions and gossip, that's not what good interviewers do. That's what people do when they're desperate to stay relevant. I'm desperate? George laughed. You're the one who needs this show to promote your movie. I could have any actor in the world sitting in that chair. Then get one who's willing to put up with your ego, Tom said. Because I'm not. Michael stood up now, too, moving between them. All right, let's all just calm down for a second. But George wasn't done. You know what I think, Tom? I think you're used to people treating you like you're special. You walk around with this tough guy persona, playing these hard men in movies, and everyone's supposed to be intimidated. But you're not that tough. You're sensitive. You can't handle criticism. Tom stared at him for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but intense. You don't know anything about me. You spent 15 minutes reading some gossip websites and decided you knew my whole story. You made assumptions. You disrespected me, you disrespected your co-hosts, and you disrespected your audience by wasting their time with this circus. If you're so offended, why don't you leave? George challenged. I'm leaving, Tom said, but not because you're getting to me. I'm leaving because I have too much respect for myself to sit here and be your punching bag. He started to remove his microphone. A producer rushed onto the set, trying to salvage the situation. Tom, please, we can restart this. We can do a different segment. Tom shook his head. No, thank you. I appreciate you trying, but I'm not staying. George finally stood up, and his face was red. Fine, walk away. That's what you do, right? When things get tough, Tom Hardy walks away. That's the story. That's who you really are. Tom stopped. He turned back around. You want to know who I really am? I'm someone who shows up on time. I'm someone who treats crew members with respect. I'm someone who works hard at my craft. I'm someone who protects my family's privacy. And I'm someone who doesn't let people like you tear me down for entertainment. People like me? George said, his voice rising. What's that supposed to mean? It means people who have forgotten what it means to have integrity, Tom said simply. You used to be a real journalist, George. You used to ask questions that mattered. Now you're here asking me if my accent makes me seem more talented. Do you hear yourself? Robin put her hand on Tom's shoulder. Tom, for what it's worth, I think you handled this with a lot of grace." "Thank you, Robin," Tom said sincerely. "You're a class act." He looked at Michael. "You too, Michael. Thanks for speaking up." Michael nodded. "You didn't deserve any of that, man." Tom turned back to George one last time. "And you. I hope whatever you were trying to prove was worth it, because you just burned a bridge with someone who came here in good faith. I wonder how many other guests you've treated this way who were just too polite to say anything." George crossed his arms. "I sleep fine at night." "I'm sure you do," Tom said. "But maybe you should ask yourself why you felt the need to attack me from the very first question. What did I do to you? We've never met before. I've never said anything negative about you. So why the hostility? Is it because you're bored? Is it because you think this is what good television looks like? Or is it something else?" "I don't have to explain myself to you," George said. "No, you don't," Tom agreed. "But you might want to explain it to your viewers, and to your co-hosts, and to your producers who are probably panicking right now because they know this is going to be everywhere in about an hour." He was right. Cameras were still rolling. Every word was being broadcast live. George seemed to realize this too. His expression shifted slightly, some of the confidence draining away. "Look, if you felt disrespected, that wasn't my intention." "Yes, it was," Tom said flatly. "It absolutely was your intention. You don't accidentally ask someone if they're too good to smile at fans. You don't accidentally suggest someone is cashing paychecks and phoning it in. You planned this. You wanted a confrontation. Well, you got one. I hope it was worth it." "Tom, please." The producer tried again. "Can we just talk for a minute?" Tom looked at her kindly. "I'm sorry. I know this isn't your fault, but I can't stay here. I won't pretend this didn't just happen. I won't sit back down and fake my way through the rest of an interview with someone who clearly has no respect for me." "It's not about respect," George tried to say. "Then what is it about?" Tom challenged. "Enlighten me. What was the goal here? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you wanted to make me look bad. You wanted to rattle me. You wanted to create a moment. And congratulations, you did. But it's not the moment you think it is." Michael stepped closer to Tom. "Hey man, I just want to say I respect you for standing up for yourself. That took guts." "I appreciate that," Tom said. "But honestly, I'm just tired. Tired of doing interviews where people are more interested in drama than in the actual work. Tired of being treated like I'm fair game for whatever narrative someone wants to create. I'm a person. I have feelings. I have a family I go home to. And I don't deserve to be ambushed like this." Robin's eyes were getting watery. "You're absolutely right. And I'm embarrassed this happened on our show." "Don't be embarrassed, Robin," Tom told her. "You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did Michael. This is on one person." George's face was getting redder. "You're really going to stand there and make me out to be the villain?" "You made yourself the villain," Tom said. "I just responded to it. And honestly, the fact that you can't see what if you did wrong is the most concerning part of all of this." A commercial break countdown started. 30 seconds. The producer was frantic. "We need to go to commercial," she said urgently. "We need to figure out what we're doing when we come back." "I can tell you what I'm doing," Tom said. "I'm leaving. I'm going back to my hotel. I'm getting on a plane. And I'm going home to my family." "You're under contract for this appearance," George said suddenly. "You can't just leave." Tom laughed, shaking his head. "Watch me. 20 seconds to commercial." "George, let him go," Robin said firmly. "Just let him go." "No," George said stubbornly. "He agreed to be here. He needs to finish the interview." "The interview is over," Tom said. "It was over the moment you decided to attack me instead of talk to me." 15 seconds. Michael moved toward George. "Dude, what is wrong with you? Why are you being like this?" "I'm being a journalist," George insisted. "You're being a bully." Michael shot back. "And everybody watching can see it." 10 seconds. Tom headed toward the exit. George called after him. "That's right. Walk away. Show everyone who you really are." Tom stopped one more time. He looked directly into the camera. "To anyone watching who came here expecting to learn about the movie, I apologize. I really wanted to share this project with you. We made something I'm proud of. But I can't continue this interview in good faith. Thank you for understanding." 5 seconds. He walked off the set as the studio cut to commercial. Robin immediately turned on George. "What were you thinking?" she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "What was that?" "I was doing my job," George said defensively. "That wasn't your job," Michael said. "That was character assassination. That was you deciding you were going to take someone down for no reason." He's an actor, George said dismissively. He can handle it. He's a human being, Robin corrected. And you treated him terribly. You ambushed him with gossip and rumors. You ignored us when we tried to redirect. You insulted Michael. You made our show look unprofessional. Our ratings are going to be huge, George said, trying to justify it. At what cost? Robin asked. We just humiliated a guest on live television. Do you know how hard it's going to be to book anyone after this? Who's going to want to come on our show if they think we're going to attack them? The commercial break was almost over. The producer came over, her face pale. We need to address this when we come back. We need to apologize. I'm not apologizing, George said firmly. Then I will, Robin said. Me too, Michael added. They came back from commercial. Robin faced the camera, her expression serious. Before we continue with the show, we need to address what just happened. Tom Hardy was our guest, and the interview took a turn that none of us expected. Michael and I want to apologize to Tom and to our viewers. That's not the kind of show we want to have. I'm not apologizing, George said on air. I asked legitimate questions. George, stop, Michael said, looking directly at him. You were out of line. We all saw it. America saw it. Just admit it. I won't apologize for doing journalism, George insisted. Robin looked into the camera. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll continue with our scheduled programming. As they cut away again, the studio erupted. Producers were on phones. Network executives were being called. Everyone knew this was going to be a disaster for the show's reputation. George sat in his chair, arms still crossed, refusing to acknowledge that anything was wrong. Robin and Michael moved away from him, both of them clearly furious. I can't believe you, Robin said to him during the break. You've damaged this show. You've damaged our credibility. And for what? To feel powerful? To prove you're still relevant? I am relevant, George said. Not after this. You're not, Michael said coldly, because everyone's going to remember the day you bullied Tom Hardy off the set for no reason. They're going to remember how you made your co-hosts uncomfortable. They're going to remember how unprofessional you were. That's your legacy now. George finally seemed to realize the gravity of what had happened. His face fell slightly, but he still didn't apologize. He still didn't admit he was wrong. Meanwhile, Tom Hardy was in a car heading back to his hotel. His phone was already blowing up with messages from his agent, his publicist, and friends who had seen what happened. The video was already being clipped and shared across social media. People were outraged on his behalf. But Tom wasn't thinking about any of that. He was thinking about how he'd handled himself, about whether he could have done anything differently, about whether walking off was the right choice. He decided it was. Some things are more important than promoting a movie. Self-respect is one of them. Dignity is another. And refusing to be treated poorly on live television, that was important too. Back at the studio, Good Morning America tried to continue their show as if nothing had happened. But everyone knew something fundamental had shifted. George had crossed a line, and there was no going back from it. Robin and Michael finished the show mostly in silence, letting the other segments play out with minimal commentary. The energy was gone. The easy chemistry the three of them usually had was replaced with tension and discomfort. When the show finally ended, Robin and Michael left the set without saying goodbye to George. The crew was subdued. Everyone knew they'd just witnessed something that would be talked about for years. George sat alone at the anchor desk, finally understanding that he'd made a terrible mistake. But it was too late. The damage was done. Tom Hardy was gone. His co-hosts were furious. The network was in crisis mode. And America had watched the whole thing unfold in real time. The interview that was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance had turned into one of the most dramatic moments in morning television history, all because one host decided that attacking his guest was more important than treating him with basic respect and dignity. Tom Hardy never came back to Good Morning America. He never needed to. He'd already said everything that needed to be said. He'd stood up for himself with grace and strength, and in doing so, he'd shown everyone watching what real integrity looks like. Not the manufactured kind that comes from reading off a teleprompter, but the genuine kind that comes from knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone diminish it, no matter how big their platform is.